He doesn't know, right, okay. Right. Okay. And there's another person named Alberto who doesn't realize he should be here. He will be. We just brought in another set of PhD students, of which Jacob is one, and he got the bursary, which was great. And it was very, very difficult competition. So congratulations. And Dane was accepted. Congratulations. Also an excellent presentation. Of course, you have just been accepted, so congratulations. And Alberto Contini, I think is his last name. This is his work here. Take a look at it. I mean, obviously not the application, but yeah. So he's a painter.
Okay.
Do you?
Yeah.
How do you know?
So when I was doing my BA, he was doing masters at my uni.
There you go. You're passing around.
Jim Mooney, who was my
Oh, yeah.
supervisor for my dissertation.
Oh, was he?
at BA.
God,
Yeah.
it's a small world.
I know, right?
Scary.
Was his supervisor for MA.
Ah, okay, that's how he came.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
And my friend broke his arm. Beside that point.
This is on the web. May I remind you that we might have to do a little bit of editing.
Yeah, cut that up.
Anyway, Francesco got in, which was also great, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to find the funding. That's the issue there. But you're okay with the funding?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And who else got in? Oh, and Gay Place got in, who is secretly known as a technician around these parts, but in fact is a really brilliant artist. And so she got in too, and it's really wonderful. She can't meet us on the Wednesdays at the moment, but she'll start coming in. Oh, Joe got in. Yes, of course. And Joe should be here, actually. Where's Joe? I knew there was one more person. I don't know if she knows that she should be here.
I'm not sure if she works on Wednesdays.
Oh, maybe, yeah. That issue, that problem.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, paying for things. Okay, so I just wanted to welcome everybody, because now we have our group, which is very exciting, even though you didn't apply, but you will next year. Oh, hi, Samira. Good to see you. There's a chair here. Okay. Good. Nice to have you here. Okay, so since we're kind of new faces and everything, if you can just go around and say whatever you'd like to say about yourself in a semi-professional manner, and what your area of interest is.
Okay.
And mainly Samira, and do you know everybody else other than Samira?
Yeah.
Okay, so go on.
Okay. I'm interested in photography.
Wait, what's your name?
Oscar. My name is Oscar. I'm a visual artist. I'm interested in photography and video so far. And now I'm researching in new technologies and like augmented reality, these kind of things. And I'm interested in the untruthfulness of photography.
The what? The untruthfulness.
Yes.
Great. Amy weren't there last night. Or we got to the evil of things, so that was about as far as we got. Anyway, yeah, great. Thank you.
I'm Jacob. I am practicing artist, that's to say. And I'm interested as well in photography and video, but probably for different reasons. I'm looking at a new way of materialization, an idea how that works. I'm not using word palimpsest anymore.
You're not. After the interview, you thought,
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah, I
You
think
got
I'm gonna
grilled to
forget
death
that
on
word.
that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna need to forget that word. But I'm still looking into the hidden. I still am interested into the hidden and what is that and how ugly it is in a good way.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I'm still looking into layering of things, but I'm not calling it palimpsest.
Okay.
I'm staying away from that. That's it.
There was an allergic reaction on the panel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fun.
Okay.
I'm Kate, I'm Senior Lecturer in Drama at Newman University, and I wish I could have come here when I was doing my PhD, because hearing how your ideas each week kind of morph brings it all back to me, and it's so important to be able to discuss it, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, so I really love that process of ideas kind of solidifying. And I'm interested in words and bodies drama.
Kathleen, we're just going around the table. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, words and bodies now.
Words and bodies. It's a Lacanian theory, but I find it's also a Heideggerian concept. After I read Identity and Difference.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm using that a lot.
My name is Mattia. I now discovered a concept called downward causality, which fits into the wider realm of complexity theory, which is the main address of my research, which I find very, very interesting. And at the same time, I am keep another foot into making art, and I realized recently that it is very important to explain why I study with a PhD something that is more science and epistemology, while I want to reach art as the target and the reason for it. And I realized that if I would try to explain what I mean only in an original or traditional, but aesthetic field of research, I would maintain that separation that puts art into the field of the senses and separates it from the rest and cuts it off, while I think the continuity of meaning and matter is unbreakable. And therefore I take it from a completely different angle.
You might need to return to Jakob's palimpsests, because it doesn't necessarily mean that they're on a linear.
No, obviously not.
You don't mean it in a continuum.
No.
They're like.
Yeah, not only linear, absolutely not. Yeah. One environment is the same that moves.
How rumors begin. Yeah, good. Thank you.
My name's Andre. I'm on the MA, part-time year one. Still bashing out what it is I'm going to be doing, but it seems to be edging towards something in the region of curatorial artist practice, collaborative crossovers.
Isn't it great to see the difference between the MA and the PhD? Because you get this broad banquet of an idea. It's lovely. It's good. Yeah, I meant that as a positive.
All right, okay. That's
Yeah.
fine. I'm gorging on a banquet at the moment.
Yeah, it's good. Good. As it should be. Excellent. Yeah, come on in. Oh yeah. Just pull up. There's a couple chairs. There. Okay. It's a little wet out there.
Oh, just yeah.
Okay.
I'm Grace, I'm second year PhD, and I'm looking at a photographic collection of women producing materialising ectoplasm and its relationship to photography, so how it could possibly put forward a different notion of representing the non-representable. So I think it's something to do. I'm a bit kaiju today, so I'll leave it at that.
But the E word is coming into your life, right?
Yes.
I love that. The ectoplasm. I think that should become a new concept. I mean, just like, like being ectoplasm. It's so great. Sorry. I'm excited about that.
I'm Dane. I'm mainly researching ideas of undecidability in real-time or non-real-time systems in contemporary art. My art practice is based primarily in digital medium, but it's with an intention to bleed out towards different mediums to pick and grab wherever it goes, and I'm also interested in combining that with software spaces and fractal topologies.
Oh, that's nice. Good. Well done. That's a new way of putting it. Very good. Excellent.
Hello, my name is Natalia, and I'm researching unseen body in contemporary fashion.
So you've just got through your interview, and you're not going to talk about Japanese flowers now. No more Japanese flowers, or did you raise that in the interview?
Actually, I had a situation where 3 professors start to discuss in between them how it's possible to continue.
Excellent. You always want that. You always want the committee to go off and discuss.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Well done. Well done. That's in case when you finally get to your viva. That's what you definitely want. You want them to go off and have a little argument with each other. You just wave every now and then. Enjoying yourselves. I said that on page 35. Yeah. Great.
Hello, Stuart's second year of the part-time fine art MA here. Some keywords: curiosity, anonymity, the work of art. It's also a bit Heideggerian poetry as well. So.
You think? But hashtag.
And hashtag. Well, yes, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still.
Okay,
things swirling around. So.
good.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm interested in philosophy, is that too obvious? It's like the school quick convictions of Newtown designers, 3 out of the multiple which you must sign. So, you know, when we do this stuff, we
I like that.
do kind of rush through it.
That was a good poem.
So I like to sort of really get into it, because there's, you know, when we go through it, you think, oh dear, we finished that now, and then I like to go back and, you know, really dig into it.
Excellent. Thank you.
My name's Lauren. There's still a notion of event, I'm afraid. and I'm still like, I'm just kind of like mixed. It feels like I've got my head in a blender or something. I turned it on and I left it on. That's what it feels like reading this. But I might come out the
It's a
other
very
side at some
interesting
point.
thing.
That's about. I don't have much more to say until I've digested this.
Okay, good.
Won the battle.
That's right. You will. That's good.
My name is Samira. I'm a painter. I'm interested in the process of learning, which involves the question of becoming of presence, mind, heart, and love.
Excellent. Wow. Good, good. That's excellent. Actually, I want you guys to sit at the table. I'm going to just say that. I know it's very. There's chairs over there if you don't want to sit at this side. I know. It's just like you'll end up going to sleep. So you better not. Thank you. No, it's just important that you feel that you're at the table. Wherever. They don't always buy them. Great. And do you have anything else to say when you get settled?
No.
You might want to raise that up.
I don't know to say. My name is Jacqueline. My research looks at actual feminine in relation to abstract painting and subjectivity.
And when is your Bible?
Soon.
We're never going to get it out of her.
It's too much pressure if everybody knows the date.
That's true.
It's too much pressure.
That's true, but you know the
Then
date.
you'll all be expecting me to pass.
Yeah, you know the date.
I know
right?
the date.
Yeah. Don't think you're not going to pass. Don't go for that. You're going to be fine. Okay, good. Okay. Where are we? Greg.
My name's Greg. I'm a PhD student based in the landscape department of BIAD. I'm interested in geo-emotional relationships and the notion of the picturesque, specifically in the wide value of area of outstanding natural beauty. Today, words that are on my mind are resistance, atmospherics, and flow.
Okay. Very good. Have you been down to the Contemporary Turner in Margate?
No, I haven't.
There's a show on right
Must,
now, which is in fact Turner.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't realize that Turner was in fact on at the Turner. So these people who come in from Germany saw me parking the car and said, is the Turner at the Turner? I was like, no, it's so silly. It's just called the Contemporary Turner. I went in there and it was like, there it all is. Anyway, they have a huge show on the picturesque.
And I'm going to have to go.
Yeah, it's quite,
Thank you.
it's interesting. I wouldn't say quite interesting, but it is interesting. It's worth the trip.
Yeah,
It's worth the
no,
trip.
I'm going to have to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, let's begin. Did you make your announcement yet?
Oh, so today is the first session about, I forgot the name of it, oh my god. Dialogues.
Very
Dialogues.
good.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Yay! I'm not very good at it, but today is the first meeting, one of a series of meetings. It's at REP, it's 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock. It's the School of Acting, presenting, and then there's a short discussion afterwards. It's a good chance, it's nothing official yet, but it's a good chance to meet up and get to know who is who and what might come out of it. Because it's all still very much, we don't know what's going to come out of it. But it's a good idea to get to know each other in a kind of creative, we're going to show you what we're doing way and discuss it. I think, Johnny, you sent an email that you wanted to do a meeting about the article press, new releases this year.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good idea to get people in this building.
Okay.
So I'm going to send, by tomorrow, I'm going to send Ed an email asking if we can get people here in November.
So let's do it for the 13th.
13th, which is Wednesday.
Yeah.
That would be perfect.
We
because
have
I'm
a
not
meeting on another meeting, research cafe presentation after the seminar.
But what time is that?
After the seminar, 4:30.
You do?
Yes, I will have to be there. Yeah.
Why are you giving it? And I'm chairing it. Oh, God. Okay. Right, okay, so not the.
Not 13th.
And the 20th, I'm doing my inaugural lecture, which will be here after this class. So let's do the 27th, that's kind of late.
That's kind of. I'm gonna check with Ed if there is nothing on 20. I think it's a bit late, but if not.
I mean, I'm happy to do it. How long does the research cafe go on for?
Usually an hour and a half.
Can't we have a research cafe here?
You could swap it with somebody else. Ask somebody else.
We told them any day
But
but
you
the
do- they
13th
do
of
expect
November,
you to
because
do
it's
it.
the 13th of November. So
Oh, okay, so let's just get that moved. I'll deal with that. Okay, what we can do is either it will move, A, or B, we'll have it here, along with the launch of Article
Maybe
Press.
that would be also a good
That would be
idea to
great.
bring even more people in.
Yeah, why not?
And if there is a even lecture room open, then maybe
Yeah.
we can use that as well.
We will do that.
Depends how it
Great, brilliant, so we'll have the
So-
launch on the 13th.
So I'm gonna 13th, yeah.
Yeah, 13th of November. Great. Okay, the other thing I was going to say, is there any other questions about this? What this reminds me of is, in my past world, America, when you went to the universities, you joined fraternities or sororities, which I never did because I hated them and I was very radical and, basically was angry at the world and so on and so forth. But as a result, also the university I went to was continually under siege because the entire university hated the world, so it was perfect. And so we really didn't have these fraternity, sorority things. But if you're going to have an alternative version, that's what I think this is. This is kind of like some sort of bizarre, you're hanging out together with people in similar walks of life that will eventually go their separate ways in the world, and you will always know them for the rest of your lives, and you will always, have their back, basically, is the idea, without the, lambda, Sigma Chi badges and the weird outfits you have to wear. So, well, you might have to wear weird outfits, but that's different, right? Okay, so it's kind of like the British version, I think, a little bit more sophisticated. Okay, right, ready to begin? Okay, we're all set. How many people actually did see the film, The Thing? All right. Bits of it.
I've seen it before.
Okay, and wanna start off? Stuart, you didn't see it. Oh, who saw it? You saw it. You saw it. Who saw it? Dane saw it. You saw it.
Yeah.
The old one.
I watched the new one
The
as
old
well
one.
actually because
I
I've
haven't
never
seen
seen
the
it
new
before.
And what is the thing in the?
Well, I watched it in terms of, it's a film I know well. My brother-in-law, whenever he's drunk, talks about it endlessly. Endlessly has been the best and ultimate horror there ever is, so I'm quite well versed in it. But I watched it in a completely different way, thinking about it in terms of inside and out.
I'm sorry.
No, it really was great actually. And I just saw, I hadn't thought about all the buildings and the settlement being the inside, being the body. So the way I looked at it, I looked at the place. So when when the dog comes across the ice and somebody actually smashes a window, they don't open a door, they don't open a window, they actually smash a window and shoot the dog. And that's the first sign that something's wrong. Yeah, but that happens, the dog goes into the paint, but it's very interesting the way that the inside slowly gets broken down bit by bit. The noise of the outside becomes more and more present, the whistling of the wind. People's clothing, there's more of them wearing jackets, outside, they're wearing them inside, The snow is gradually entering the place. I mean, they go to the Norwegian camp, which has been completely obliterated, but whatever. And it's completely taken over by the elements, the snow and ice everywhere. So gradually, this building, this place, just becomes inhabited by the exterior. And I really like that. And I really like the fact that it was somebody breaking through the inside to the outside and shooting the thing that eventually brought it in, So that was the interesting.
And what was the
interesting
thing?
for me. Well, it was the.
Did you see this?
Well, I can say what it is, but I don't necessarily want to spoil it.
No, you can spoil it. It's right.
I think it's more about who it was actually, as
Okay.
opposed to what it is. I mean, it is something that has arrived from another planet. But I mean, the original was made, I think, post-war. I think it was a suspicious you know, part of the history of many films that were made after, you know, after the war, the Cold War, you know, discussion of aliens and so on, on the other side of the planet. Yeah, that's all I can really say.
Oscar, what was the thing in your mind?
The thing is something that is, I don't know, unknown, but the funny thing with the movie, I think, is that you never know where is the alien inside. If some person has the alien inside, so you start to be suspicious of everyone. So in one point, everyone is a stranger.
Yeah.
Because you cannot trust in anyone.
Right.
Even if there are actually humans.
Yeah, that's called working at the university.
So, yes, actually, inside your mind, everyone is suspicious. So, for me, this is the point of, depend of your point of view, everything changes. Knowing that there's something wrong with someone.
The way the thing worked was the thing would take things and duplicate them and destroy the original.
Getting warmer. That's good. Okay.
It would assimilate it.
Anybody else want to talk about the thing?
Well, the thing performed.
What?
The thing changed into the person that was.
Right. So the thing wasn't embodied.
No.
It performed body.
Performed body. So, and then killed the original someone, and then it mixed up into the whole group, and fight for survival in some way by, you know, mixing up everything. So it's not by making people believe he's not a thing. He can point out everybody else for them to be a thing. So then
And everybody else became a thing.
And everybody else became a thing.
And so, what did this thing break into 50 million thing pieces, or was there only ever one thing that convinced everybody else to be a thing?
It did. In the film, it broke. In the film, it broke into pieces, lots of pieces. And
Like
even,
Mercury, it just kind of came.
yeah, even more so in the remake, actually.
Yes, well, yes, we're not going to talk about the remake. We're always simplifying things, not the film. Dane, what was your view?
I figure that film sort of exists between these two different points where between these strange few seconds of excessive gore and flesh, and then these more sort of flat moments as well, and when they sort of, well, I don't think they really interacted together, you know. I don't think there was, and again it was like, there was these elements of science fiction and horror, but again I don't think they sort of
They're not one and the same thing.
no.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, I also learned at least the same year as E.T. Two different points and aliens visiting that.
So the thing is coming from the outside, or the external Archimedean point somewhere. And what constitutes it being a thing?
It inhabits something else.
Okay, so it's able to inhabit, so it's able to project itself, and then also inject itself, or somehow assimilate, like somebody said. Right, what else?
It's just that nobody knows what the thing is until it becomes something else that's recognisable. So it's
It
an
has no
unknown.
point of fixity or no distinct, it has no boundaries or limits of a fixed thing, because it's continuously taking the form of other things or becoming something else. It's in becoming, it's not a...
It's a becoming thing.
Yeah.
It's a thinging thing, right? No?
Physically flux, it was.
So when the thing became involved in the embodied other person, the other thing, other entity, did the other entity know it was becoming thing? No, it just became thing. Okay, anything else? Did you see it? Do you want to comment on it anyway? Okay. Anybody else? Mike?
What state was your university at?
Maryland. Why'd you ask?
Why? Yeah. Nothing. Well, there was on the news talking about nuclear stuff, nuclear actors, and they dropped an atomic bomb in Carolina. It's a state, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Which one safety thing had not stopped it, the whole of Carolina would have disappeared. There was a lot of these examples. I was just feeling a bit worried, but the disappeared at one point.
And I know that this might be a stretch, but is that somehow connected to thing?
I think it's connected to anxiety.
Okay,
or
and-
anxiety. It's connected to horror, and my understanding of horror.
Okay,
Um,
getting warmer here, even warmer.
but no, it doesn't make disturbed. It's a bit cold and wet.
Okay. Okay, so the thing has, let's say, some form of anxiety, or can have an anxiety, or it can produce anxiety, but it itself is not anxiety.
I think it's survival. I think the thing was survival. It was just surviving in any way it possibly could under the even to the point that it would freeze itself.
But does it
To
have an
survive.
intention to survive?
It's just
does.
I'd just say it's reacting to its conditions, into its environment.
If you were to be the thing,
If I were to be
Yeah.
a thing, like
just
me,
fine,
Johnny.
you're
Yeah.
the thing. Would that be the not Johnny, as we were talking about?
No,
No.
no, but I can see where you raised that. It wouldn't be the not Johnny. So the kind of the question is the thing, but now that we're on the not versus the something, is the thing, from the point of view of the film anyway, the other, that then somehow manages to get inside or amalgamates to the not other? Because that's why you're asking that question, right? Yeah. Like, what do you think thing is, before we end up opening up the book and seeing what thing is on this thing, yeah, Dane?
An interesting thing with the remake was
Okay,
that
you don't want to use the word thing.
okay.
This
An
is like,
interesting aspect of the remake
okay, yes,
was that it would assimilate human beings, but it couldn't do any, if somebody had PS earring, if somebody had amalgam, if they had fillings, it couldn't absorb those. Those would drop on the floor.
okay,
So it was only the biological material that it was able to
assimilate,
replicate, assimilate.
yeah,
Actually, yeah.
okay, what were you gonna say?
Well, the word project in some way comes to mind. It's not that the thing is the other. It kind of projects the other that already exists within it. So it's not that it makes and creates the other by its existence of the thing. It projects something that already is there
Okay,
by becoming or performing or whatever it does. The thing. So it reveals the thing. It reveals
it's
the
a revealing of the
yeah, so
thing.
it reveals the other,
Go
but
on.
not creates the other. Is that right?
Okay,
I wonder, probably going against what Greg said in a way, but whether it recognises difference. So it's,
and it recognizes the difference that it is from something else.
yeah.
Like it knows that it, or somehow there's a relation that, let's say, mathematically computes it and realizes isn't the wrong word, but let's say does its sums, and they don't match, and then they can go forward, something like that.
Yeah. Sort of recognises the difference in itself, so why it is different.
Okay.
So I just see it as it's just look at the life support.
I think it's because
No,
they're
no,
not,
no.
Winging it.
Right?
because they're not hosts, though they are a complete double because he kills the original. I've only seen clips, so is that right? But then it's only when they're exposed or that people suddenly realise that.
And how do people realize that
Well, he tests the blood, doesn't he? It's a narrative level. And then obviously the thing exposes itself because it biologically mutates and becomes something that's
Some other thing.
Yeah, something else.
Okay, we're getting.
There's an
yeah.
interesting thing that Grace has reminded me of the testing of blood, where in the film they talk about everything of the thing is a thing. So the blood reacts to the heat because every cell is a thing. It's not everything of the thing is a thing.
Right.
And there's no better way I can really.
It's not just a blob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's like the thing is defined by its thingness.
The thing is defined by its thingness.
It has a
Excellent.
has a
See
gra-
how Heidegger lives. It's like, yes.
I want to say through Kant, it's the sort of two talking about kind of transcendental thing, an abstract thing, and then there's this kind of empirical thing, which is the film you're talking about. But the question of what a thing is in a transcendental, abstract, categorical sense is completely different from what it might be empirically. And as you say, the things, which get to combine the two. So which are we going for here? Are we trying to be sort of that?
All of them.
All of them, yeah.
And also, there's also the non-transcendental, non-empirical thing,
Yes, I'm sure there is.
which is what you were getting at, I think, with things.
And how do we understand that?
We'll get there, I hope. Into this. Did you bring your book that you had?
Didn't, I scanned it. It's on the Dropbox.
Oh, right. Can you just pull it up for a second? I did see it on the Dropbox. And you started reading this to your kids? Or did they read it themselves? You read it for yours? And then you had kids, so then it makes sense.
That's right, yeah.
Fine.
It doesn't look
Then don't feel so bad. That's what, when I go see these movies, you have to find a child.
Yeah.
You got it?
1 second.
Okay. While we're bringing the thing up, never mind. So, there you go. Okay, Emily and the thing. Okay. Yes. Now, what is the thing in Emily Brown and the thing? What is this thing, the thing?
Are we talking again on a narrative
Just-
of the book?
Yeah.
It is essentially her fears
Right.
in thing form.
In thing form.
Yeah,
But it is a
which,
thing.
But it is a thing, and it's probably what you would imagine if you asked a child what is a thing. They would maybe draw it like.
Like that monster.
Yeah, but it's not like anything else. Well, I know it is like other things, isn't it? It's got 2 arms, 2 legs, I think.
So it's like a human thing.
Yes, it's based on human form.
So what about in Harry Potter? Yes, I've read all the films. But I haven't read the books. I feel slightly better about that. Face. It's like totally disgusting. Isn't there something that he does with his wand to make the fear go away? Like you're supposed to do something with this. No one wants to admit to having seen the Harry Potter film like this. There's some sort of thing you have to say to a scary creature, and it goes away.
Oh.
You're talking about the Dementors.
The
Yeah,
Dementors.
I'm not ashamed, that's Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what
Patronus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Patronus.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
that's
which
right.
takes the form of a thing, I suppose.
Yes.
And it's individual for each.
And so every time you have this demented anxiety,
Yeah.
how do you fight it? Because the way in which, I thought it was kind of clever in that film.
You need to think about something, the most happy memory. Oh my god, I love that. I love those books. And I love it.
It's all right, it's all right.
So yeah, you need to think of the happiest memory of your life, and that helps you to produce the defense against the fear, basically.
Against the thing.
Yeah, against the
dementor, yeah.
which is the embodied of the fear.
But don't you have to say something? I thought you had to do something to it, like go away or something. You had to,
You need to say a spell. You
Yeah,
need to
I
say
can't remember what it
Inspector
is.
Patronus, and
That's
bring your wand.
actually, I think that's.
Yeah, and it takes later on. It takes the form.
Yeah,
The
manifest.
Patronus itself, the spell takes the form of animals usually, but they're individual to each character. So the
they're
spell
individual
depends-
to the fear that one has.
Yeah, to what makes them happy. Harry Potter, for example, didn't have a happiest memory because he didn't.
Because he was
He
unhappy.
was always unhappy.
That's right.
That's why I love it. But so he imagined memory basically. He made kind of a memory that made him happy. He's thinking about his parents that he never knew. So kind of what he thinking about that was his happiest memory.
So what would
That
be
was
happiness
never
if he
real.
could have been happy?
Yeah.
It would have been that.
Yeah.
So he had a fake happy
Memory.
play against a fake
Like,
fear, a real fear that was taking a fake form.
and the fear sucks up your happiness as well. It gives
Yeah.
you a kiss and sucks up your happiness.
We lose him for a moment while he
Yeah,
thinks
please,
about
please.
other things. That's right. We'll leave you to
Yeah.
yourself as well while
There
you
you go.
just think. Okay, shall we open the book here? I think that we've got enough on the table, well, literally, in this case, about, do you have as well, about, I would wanted to, we were basically got to around page 39, 40, somewhere in there. Oh, what? Oh. Yes. What I was going to wonder, okay. So before we get into what is a thing in philosophy, or certainly in Heidegger and Wittgenstein, because it's not the same thing everywhere else. One of the reasons that's right. Does everybody have a way of looking on so you can see this? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So one of the reasons I wanted you to take a look at the film was because we do bring to anything you read your own arsenal of how you're going to read it. Otherwise, it'll just be like learning a new language without any kind of grounding. I mean, without any kind of base at all. So I think that what's interesting about popular culture is that it does take sort of common sense views on things, and in this case, the actual thing called a thing, and starts to weave it, and you're going to be doing this too, and I wanted to get you to be aware of how you do this, or that you do it. Basically, that's the first part of this. The second part is to think to yourself, what's the difference between an objectivity, empiricism, and a thing? So just try and have these things, these comments circling in your mind. And God, this is what happens when you notice you're talking about the thing. Every time one of us says the word thing, think of a synonym and write it down so that we get a whole picture of what this thing called the thing is. So when you say this, what is this thing? Or am I saying what is the element? Am I saying the aspect? Am I saying the body? What is this thing called the thing when you use the word thing other than conceptually as we're going to start developing? So just think about that. Is thinking a thing? Is breathing a thing? Is ing-ing thing? Becoming, moving, you know, the ing is grammatically speaking, is called a gerund. One of my OCD problems, I just want you to know that word. G-E-R-R-A-N-D, gerund. Gerund means swimming, walking, talking, inging. It's the moving form of the verb. I think verbs, by the way, are just fabulous things. To think is the infinitive, it's fantastic, of this thing. So, and then you have the inging aspect of the verb. Then there are adverbs. So the grammatical structures of language is quite interesting just at this level, at trying to really beginning to sort of tease out how complex the relationships are that we're talking about. So this is not to depress you and to make you think, I'm never going to understand this, okay, because eventually you will understand it and it will happen before you finish your thesis. I'll mention that. And if it doesn't happen before you finish your thesis, it'll happen very shortly thereafter. Okay, so don't worry. Now, did anybody have a chance to read Heidegger's Das Thing? No, it was probably too much to do the reading of. Did anybody take a look at that? The Heideggerian form of the thing. Did you take a look at it?
Brennan.
Yeah, not from Brennan, but from actually looking at the Heideggerian move. Okay, that's fine. Well, let's say from the Brennan, from the Bremen lectures. Oh, have you looked at that recently? Well, can you remember it?
It's complicated because Heidegger starts talking about the thing in terms of this thing called the thought.
Yes.
Which is in itself just a complication because it's not really a thought. Anyway, there's the.
And there's not really four of them, but all right.
Yeah, and there's only four. There's four. So he starts to about
This is the great thing about being a
things in
philosopher.
terms of the sky, which are multiple and covered, or visible if you like, in terms of the earth, which are singular and covered. That's right. No, the gods are, the sky is multiple entities, people are singular, the sky, the gods are multiple and closed and singular.
Can you just repeat that again?
Yes, I'm trying
Because
to
you
get
got very quiet.
So
at the very end.
pause into things, is what we like, we'd say this, we pause into things, the whispering, multiple whisperings of the gods. There's the hidden upsurge from the earth kind of thing. There's the multiple understanding of the sky, which I take to mean, you know, the cosmology, movement of days and things, and entities which might mean humans or not. But he pours all this into what he's going to call the thing. He understands things, you know, it breaks down how we might even begin to start to understand the thing. So yeah, and he does this quite a lot in a lot of his.
But you did well. I mean, considering you weren't even being asked to do this. Can you just repeat it one more time?
Yeah, he's trying to
These four things. I mean, because I think it's very
to
important.
break out of our subject-object understanding or the normal category. He looks at things and he starts to pour into, and I'm saying pour into, this is like from one of his examples of the way that water goes into the jug. But he talks about things that there's a kind of the whisperings of the gods, the multiple whisperings of the gods, which are covered over. So you don't really kind of hear them. It's like a whisper. And then you try to understand, what it might mean by the secrets coming to you. The secrets which in the Heideggerian understand would have to be torn from the thing, all truth from Heideggerian aspects of Greece. It has to be torn, it has to be stolen from the thing.
Although he is also relating to Kierkegaard.
Yeah.
Notion of secret. So mention that.
Then we have the earth is also covered over, but that seems to be a singular thing, a singular upsurge. So think of this all in relation to things. There's a kind of upsurge from the earth. There's the whispering, the secret whispering of the God, which is like the divine in Aristotle, maybe nuclear physics now. Then we have the multiple multiple understandings in the sky, which has to do with the days and the planets, or that's how I understand it. Again, going into the object, which probably been around a lot longer than I will. I don't know, or bits of it. Maybe not. Suns and stars, and then we have the entities, the people themselves, and how they relate. And all this goes into the object in his kind of poetical understanding, in order to try and access objects in different ways. An object, try to think. Sorry.
Okay, so the very first aspect, the very first moment that we're going to talk about here, that the Heideggerian move, is to move away from object-subject as discussions of entities, so that a thing, which in fact is an entity, and in fact also isn't an entity, and in fact is also something other than an is or not entity, and is also located elsewhere from an entity. So you have yes, no as an entity, you have other as an entity, you have elsewhere as an entity, and you have the infinite, which is everywhere as an entity. So now, in a certain sense, you could say that as a result, there's different ways of accessing spatiality and temporality that are not fixed. So it's not like time does one thing and space does something else. Time has several aspects to it, space has several aspects to it. Sometimes they're together, space-time, sometimes they're apart. And I think Mark did a fairly brilliant summation, particularly since you haven't read it like yesterday. That's not a bad memory. And this is in the Bremen, the lectures in Bremen, the Freiburg and Bremen lectures. Anyway, we're putting this on the table because now I'm going to call on Mattia, horrified, to try and, what would Wittgenstein say is a thing?
Well, Wittgenstein shifts his position, but he refers originally as an invisible body, which made me think of Natalia straight away when I was in this.
Which made you think of what?
Natalia.
Oh, Natalia, in the unseen bodies.
Unseen body, invisible body as the meaning of a word.
Okay, okay, this is, so it's kind of like the ectoplasm before it's seen.
And what it starts from is the hope that we can secure the link between the word and this invisible body that supports it.
So say it again very slowly because Grace is now listening to this. Not that you weren't listening before, I didn't mean it like that, I didn't mean it like that, I just meant that you, because I'm gonna call on you about the ectoplasm. Yes, I'm just alerting you to this, yes.
But it is the first work in the Tractatus of Logical Philosophy, because he hopes, in the line of all the traditional modern philosophy, to secure the link between the word and his thing, the thing it points to, which he calls an invisible body. So the meaning of the word, and the word is does reduce to a name.
Say it again, nobody got that, only like 1.5 people got that.
Okay. So he's trying to secure, to ascertain the relationship between a word and its meaning. That meaning he identifies or describes as an invisible body.
Okay, so not semiotics,
Not semiotics.
not a song, not a signifier.
And so the meaning is somewhere there, the word is here. And by doing so, though, the word is not any word. As we mentioned before, verbs and adverbs, or gerunds, things that move. No, the word is reduced, or is only considered as a noun. So the relationships he speaks of are names and their things. It becomes, you know,
And in that case, things are properties.
well, it's a proper name, the name that is proper to that thing. So again, is a direct line he's trying to figure out between the noun and the object that noun refers to. And I use object, and I remember that somewhere in here, the description of an object as dry good comes up as well. So it's and not any object. No, the description of the thing, the film, the thing.
Yeah.
That addresses organic matter. In this case, in this form of logic model that Wittgenstein aims at building, there is almost no room for that. This is a thing, and this has got a name. The rest is somehow left out.
You mean in the Tractatus?
Yes.
Yeah, not in
No,
his
no,
later work.
Tractatus,
Yeah, yeah.
Tractatus.
So, because he moves way far away.
Then, obviously, realizes that this leaves out everything else. All the movement of language and thinking that is instead part of our life. So he goes on to say that it is not wrong to think of the relationship between a name or a noun and his thing in this term, in these certain pure direct terms. But this is not the whole of logic, this is not the whole of language or the whole of thought. Because there are plenty of other instances where it is impossible to draw a direct line. It goes on in various instances of when a height is no longer a height and it becomes a mound, for example. You can point at red, and certainly something is red, but when it becomes reddish and when it's no longer reddish too much to the yellow, so it's orange. There are these nuances that are no longer allowing for a direct
hit.
Direct hit, if you like.
But what that does bring in a little bit, or what I want you to, I'm just going to throw it on the table because it's too hard to guess what it is, because we'll go through it in a minute, is how the word possession enters into thing. Thing, for Wittgenstein, has an ability to possess. And it doesn't possess thingness. It's not the Hegelian move where there's an essence being possessed. There's something around possession that's going on here. So that you can say, you can look to and point to an ish or that, or you can point to a noun, you can point to a pronoun, you can point to a fake name, a nickname. These are all like ishes, types of things, but they possess something in that pointing, in that move. Okay, so we have two different, or did you want to go on? No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Just wanted to. Okay. Anybody have a question at the moment? So, because we've got and we're not talking about the Kantian notion of thing at the moment. We're not talking about the Hegelian notion of thing. I just want to get this aspect of thing that we're talking about here on the table. which is very similar to the film, The Thing. Okay, that's why I want you to see it. Dane, did you have a? All silent? Lauren? No? Stuart? Okay, so we have the two giants of philosophy here with us. Martin, Ludwig. Okay. I know, I'm so sorry.
Well, I was laughing.
You did say that you were getting into Heidegger a little bit. Sorry.
No choice, man.
That's right, see? Okay. And on the table, Braver then does what with those? Because those are two very well articulated positions on this thing called the thing. Does anyone want to take a run at it? Grace, do you want to take a run at it? No, I don't. Funny you should ask. Don't want to take a run at it. Nobody wants to? Great? No. What is how does, see, these seem like they're kind of far apart, these positions. And this whole book is around saying how they're so not far apart. They're so, like, they should be like best friends, you know?
So
Yeah.
is he grafting the two?
Now, what does it mean to graft?
I'm thinking that it must be.
I mean in a plant way.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
it helps me to live with a gardener, because otherwise I would have thought of stealing.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. That's make a bit of a jump.
No, no.
And I was talking to Sarah about grafting the other day, I think. But it's. And I was explaining it from the botanical sense that you have a rootstock which has certain properties. So in the sense of a fruit tree, it might be that it's dwarf form. And then you've got it's called the scion, I think, is what you.
Do not ask me.
No,
Ask
sorry,
Mark, he
anybody-
knows about plants. He doesn't know. Does anybody know about plants here?
I might be wrong on that,
Yes.
but yeah. So then you have, essentially you're probably putting on, like for instance, an apple that has good flavour and good keeping qualities, but may ordinarily grow tall, so you put it onto a rootstock that grows small. And so you've got a small version of your nice tasting apple that's tall as well, or a small tree, so you, in that instance you'd be able to pick it more easily. But anyway, but with that, there's a one-way thing, I think, so that's maybe why it falls down a bit, because I think.
With the graft thing, it's a one-way thing.
Yeah. Which is maybe.
Because you can't graft a root onto it.
The
So it's
rootstock
like-
wouldn't gain anything from what you've grafted on, but the thing that you've grafted on gains.
So that the root becomes a host, as it were.
Yeah.
Okay. It didn't quite
So I
work.
guess, yeah.
Voice.
Is it because they're both critiquing the fact that it comes back to an image? So that even though Heidegger is talking about it in terms of, I think, does he talk about a chalice when he's talking about this, and that's why it brings in the religious connotation of how it's used?
He
in
does talk
ritual?
about chalice, yes.
Okay, that's
Well
fine.
done.
Woo, point to me.
Yes, wonderful. That's very good.
Um,
Okay, but you're right about this thing, image in a way. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Well, they're both critiquing that everybody comes back to the idea of a picture when they're talking about something, and that is already a kind of a prior, or you already understand it as something that is a nameable thing, and everybody has that image in their head, and that's not what should be happening. It should be, you have to think about the relationship between the picture and language and how it's come to be articulated.
Excellent. Yes. You want to repeat that? Because you're right. See if you can repeat it, so that, because Oscar didn't hear the whole thing.
So, if I say to everybody, what is a chair, they would, I assume, would immediately think of a picture of a chair or point to a chair. And why do we do that? It's because it's the easiest thing, and everybody understands it's a common kind of logic. And even though Heidegger and Wittgenstein approach it in a different manner, they are both critiquing the fact that everybody does that, and that's not, it's the main way of thinking, but it's possibly not the only way of thinking.
Okay, so that way of understanding a picture would be called representation, and that's what they're critiquing. But they're going to come up with a different way of coming up with image, which is going to be called thing. And that's where we're moving, so that's why that was like 75 points.
Also critiquing, that's where confusion comes from.
Yeah, can you explain that? That's right.
Well, when he talks about things being in my head, that kind of thing, then we, in language, I suppose, things that we recognise, we say things not necessarily as a figure of speech, but they get the context gets changed. So we say things and refer to abstract concepts of things that things pictorially, or what Grace said. But that's what happens when there's confusion, because linguistically they don't actually refer to a picture of something.
Good.
If that makes sense.
And he says later on as well that when people haven't come to philosophy before, that's the thing that trips them up the most. This made me feel so much better because it was like you use words but in a completely different context. So essentially you wouldn't understand it, but that's the point. It's to get out of all the things that you just take as a kind of given.
Yeah, and they shake it.
Yeah.
There is a piece of Joseph Kossuth from 1968.
Can you spell the name so that the people on the World Wide Web can hear it?
Kosthu, no.
KSUTH.
Yes, I could review.
How is it spelled?
Kosuth.
Oh, Kossuth. Okay, right.
Yeah. That I mean, it is the beauty and the limit of that moment of conceptual art. But it takes a chair, then there is a life-size photograph of the chair next to it, leaning on the wall, and then next to it there is a printout of the dictionary definition of chair, also framed and leaning on the wall, which is precisely the game that Wittgenstein tries to play.
Right, and can you explain how that's precisely the game, since I think 3 people don't know that?
I think that's rather intuitively. Because the hope of early Wittgenstein and the same problem that Heidegger individuates and that they both criticize is that the fact that the chair would comply with this visual image, which is already highly problematic, because the image, for example, in that case is black and white, it is 2D and not 3D like the chair. And then the definition of the dictionary, the verbal definition of the object. These sort of triad together should form and guarantee the identity of the chair, the possibility of recognition of the chair, almost that the chair would always have one to sit on it. And Wittgenstein hopes, in the first part of his work, that if he can prove logically that this basic link between a noun and its object works, then on that he can build everything else. Is like Hegel's attempt to explain what is 0 and what is 1 to ground all of mathematics.
And why doesn't that work? Why does Wittgenstein finally say?
Well, because then he
that's
goes
the
on
wrong way to do it?
what happens afterwards is it's a skepticist problem. That where would be the rule that guarantees that we recognize every possible version of chairs in the universe, or every possible number that would follow 1, 2, 3, 3 million, and some. How can we count? Do we have them already in our mind? Are they all laid out already somewhere in a pure space? And do we come across them at a certain point when we need them, or we encounter them? Or if they aren't already existing somewhere else, how do we recognize them? How do we recognize all the possible shades of red and then decide, oh, this is no longer red, it's becoming orange or violet?
And how do we?
That's precisely the problem it clashes against in the end. There isn't, it becomes a game of recognition where the certainty somehow comes only afterwards, once it has been accepted and implemented in discourse.
So the judgment of what it is
based on another judgment.
Pardon me?
Is based on another judgment.
Is based on another judgment, and so how far back do you go in your judging of this and then that, and how far back do you go? So how is it, let's go back to Kossuth and his chair, writing of the chair.
It becomes the Cartesian doubt we were discussing 2 weeks ago. I mean, it can only work if one accepts that it has to play among the 3 continuously and never stop it. It's a musical chair game, if you like.
So the thing, getting warm here, so the thing is this musical chair game, and also the thing are the things that are in the game.
No.
Okay.
The thing is the musical chair game. The thing is the surface, is the exchange of the economy that happens in between the name and the noun and is being received. So far, the Indian distance as the meaning of language is the proper application of grammar. If I respect all the rules and what I say finds the same a reaction that I expect, that's all I can ask of language.
Okay, we're getting warmer, Dane.
Is it the forever links? It's not hard because you start off by creating a picture, an image of the world, and then the problem then starts when you start to sort of begin to carry on being in relation to that picture, as in that picture that you created guides whatever you do, whatever you think about, instead of what you had before when you created a picture from that being in relation to the world.
So do you think that that's the ectoplasm problem? Do you think that people have created a picture of what the channeling the supernatural is, and it looks like this kind of goo that comes out, and then they take this goo, then they find the goo that they're looking for, and they read it back into the environment? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the image sort of, it tethers.
It's what?
It's a representation of it, but
Right.
really ectoplasm, because it's so heterogeneous, it's an unnameable thing.
But the ectoplasm exists as the image that one would have in their head that verifies in the mind what you see. And therefore, and that's using, let's say, the Tractatus version of taking it, having a picture in your head and then going out and finding it, and then finding it, and then reading it back into the image. So that's what's trying to be broken in this move. Any questions so far? Because we have to get to page 47. Yes, of course. The one over there, if you can open. And just try and open it without the painting falling down. Last night someone got clobbered by the photograph, which was really unfortunate as well. It was just a night. That's right. Where's the little hole? And it should probably be behind the coat rack.
I don't think there was a recorder with the
Okay.
I've seen the piece, I know what you mean.
Okay, let's take a look at the way in which, well done. That'll be fine. Crash. Now the best part was when someone then sat on the top of that bureau. And I just thought that was going to be it for the rest of the evening. It was pretty amazing when they picture filmed those people.
I don't know what caused it to drop me.
I think what it is that somebody leaned against the plastic that was sticking out,
Yeah.
or somehow moved the plastic, and then it slipped. Rather than slipping down, it fell forward and clobbered everybody. Just shocking, but actually funny from this perspective. That was wrong on my part. Okay.
Can I just ask about the chairs thing? I'm
Yeah.
probably walking into a trap.
You are.
Yeah. I was trying to sort of thinking particularly about the chairs. I was sort of thinking of triangulating, and the chair in that instance, the physical chair, is the thing that you triangulate from. But there's always got to be something before, an intention.
Why does there always have to be something?
that comes before? Does there not?
I mean, you might be right. I'm not
Well, no,
I'm not challenging
I'm
you.
not sure whether I'm right, but it's I don't know whether it's as simple as a need or maybe I'm too hung up on the chair. Perhaps that's the
Can we
Sat
quote you
down
on that?
chair.
Stuart is hung up on the chair.
No, but I
Yeah.
just answer that. When I was still thinking about the chair, I just said saying about it would be interesting if there was a sound recording of somebody saying chair as well. I don't know, in English or whatever language. That would add another way of representing the thing.
Right.
That
The thing called chair.
the thing called chair. So I'm
The
just
noun.
But I'm sort of, it's almost trying to go back to pre-representation as well, and I think it is what you're talking about. All these things don't exist already.
But then they all exist
But they have the potential.
when the
to-
ready happens. They exist sort of in the same moment, but they don't exist independently of that moment.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So if you withdrew this shell game that's going on, it'd all fall down like London Bridges in a little song.
I'm not sure whether it can happen retrospectively.
No, it can't. It can't. I'm just saying that it only happens at the same time. There is no
It can only
retrospective.
happen once.
No, it can only happen as it's happening,
Right.
and it's the happening.
Yeah.
But if an alien came with not with four,
For
two
example.
arms, two arms,
And
two-
then had
two
the
legs.
ectoplasm. Wait a
No, no,
minute.
but had a completely different shaped body, or didn't actually have a body, had nothing, and just happened upon. It wouldn't maybe reflect upon itself and look at the thing and think about its use. That because I think that's
It's a big if, but okay.
Okay,
Let's put the
okay,
if on.
okay,
I think
but
the if can be on the table.
the
No,
yeah. It's,
I agree.
Yeah, but it's a big if, but at the same time,
It's a
Wittgenstein
good if.
does. He said he brings in aliens all the time,
I'm
thinking,
sorry.
what if someone... no, it's true, it's true. If someone comes from a...
No, he didn't mean that you, Greg, were bringing aliens all the time. He meant that this thing
Wittgenstein
brings
does.
in
And
the notion of
there
thing.
was a passage somewhere where he thinks that we cannot understand what a dog thinks because we do not inhabit the same world the dog inhabits. So there is potential.
But a cat you can understand. No, just kidding.
if the chair is warm, the cat will be on it.
Yeah, right.
So there is a whole possible set of other references that might be at work in a dog's world, but it's not the same set of references and of links, nouns, things that we have. So it becomes untranslatable. So it keeps crashing against these barriers of language that works only internally and cannot guarantee the range.
But isn't Stuart asking the question? Sorry.
No,
Yeah, go-
that's all right.
No, go on.
No.
You're forced now.
No, I kind of. Dogs
Yes.
have a language.
They do have a language, yes.
They live by the language, they own the language, so they have the same. But it's different language, but it's still language.
It's still language. It still communicates.
So that changes it.
Okay, so let's park the dog and the cat.
It's not alien now.
Yeah, we won't go into the anthropological versus the yes.
Just a reference. Has anyone ever seen the film The Gods Must Be Crazy?
Yes.
Yeah, then in that film, a civilization, African tribe that has no contact with civilization, stumbles upon this Coca-Cola bottle and they don't know what it is. They use it as a tool, as a weapon, as a cooking instrument, but they don't know what it is. They treat it as all these different sorts of things because they have no sort of context to understand what this bottle is.
Yes. Okay, so I think we're just lay that here. That's going to be part of the thing discussion. Let's just go back to what Stuart was asking in terms of, is there something that pre-exists, as it were, this little musical chair game? Is there like a transcendental that creates a kind of amorphous ground or a groundless ground or something like that? That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yes, Lauren.
This bit, because I was just thinking.
Which bit is that bit?
Well, this bit is in here, but I was.
Okay, a book we're not reading, but that's all right.
It's
No,
It's quite cool. And
Can you just say what book that is so that people,
lessons of the lessons on the analytical sublime.
and who wrote that book?
Because I was thinking I don't know anything else. But I was just thinking that this bit I read this morning seems to relate a bit in this sort of distinction between transcendental and transcendent that he makes here.
Okay,
And he ends up with
transcendental and transcendent.
Can I read this?
Yeah, go on. Can you read it loud?
So long as an idea regulates the legitimate use of a faculty in its realm or territory, it is transcendental. It is transcendent when it makes
It's transcendent.
transcendent when it makes for itself objects for which experience supplies no material.
Wait, so read that again.
Well, so long as an idea regulates the legitimate use of a faculty in its realm or territory, it is transcendental. It is transcendent.
Transcendent.
Transcendent. When it sounds right when I say it in my head.
That's okay, that's okay. You have the privilege of being able to go inside your head, but we don't have that privilege, so you have to keep doing it.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, transcendent. It is transcendent when it makes for itself objects for which experience supplies no material, either in the realm or the territory. It is not determinable by the means that govern judgment in this field. It is a mere thought entity. The thought entity was defined in the table of nothing as an empty concept without object. Ens rationalis. It is the blank concept for an object for which intuition has nothing to show. But in itself, or as an object of thought, this empty concept is no less certain. Its transcendence is certain. The concept of the supersensible is transcendent, but certain. Its certainty is immediate. It cannot be obtained by given proofs, which are impossible. It is transcendental in that it is required by critical reflection in the judgment of taste when reflection looks to legitimate the demand for communication of taste. It is transcendent in that its object remains unknown. In other words, this demand to be communicated is not equivalent to the presentation of the object of the supersensible. The demand is but the presence or sign of the object that is absolutely absent, insensible, in the strict sense of the word knowledge.
Good. Can you read that again? And also tell us the page number.
Page 211, halfway or something.
Oh, that's fine. Because I don't know, did everybody get the difference between transcendent and transcendental? No, so I think we need to hear it one more time. Not that you'll get it this time either, but at least you'll now know something about pay attention to the way in which the idea, the faculties of the idea, whether or not something has an absence, what does it mean to be empty?
Sorry, page 209?
211.
Okay.
So long as an idea regulates the legitimate use of a faculty in its realm or territory, it is transcendental. It is transcendent when it makes for itself objects for which experience supplies no material, either in the realm or the territory. It is not determinable by the means that govern judgment in this field. It is a mere thought entity. The thought entity was defined in a table of nothing as an empty concept without object, ens rationis. It is the blank, sorry, it is the blank, quotation.
I just picture Harry Potter here, you know, the big table of people with the wizards all with the blank. It is the blank, and they point to the blank. That's where I'm at it.
I like the blank.
I do too.
It is the blank concept for an object for which intuition has nothing to show. But in itself,
Say it again. Is
yes,
the
this
blank?
seems to relate to what we're talking
Yes,
about.
this is the key part. Say it again. The blank is what?
It is the blank concept for an object for which intuition has nothing to show.
It is the blank concept.
Oh, for which, sorry, it is the blank concept for an object
Wait, is the blank concept for an object
for which intuition has nothing to show.
for which intuition has nothing to show? What does that mean? What does that little bit mean? It's a bit of an attack on Hegel there, but what are you hearing when you hear this? Not so much what does Leotard mean, what are you hearing and how does that relate to? Because that's a very important, what do you think, Lauren?
Well, I suppose like Wittgenstein is trying to sort of, this early work, he's sort of trying to claim the opposite, because he's trying to draw, he's trying to put a border around something by possessing it in the picture.
Right, and
Whereas-
so how does that answer Stewart? It's answering Stewart's concern. How does that do it?
Sorry, can you outline that concern?
I think it's where the representation of the object.
Thank you, Stewart. Yes, everyone can be Stewart today. That's right, go on.
Not Stuart.
That's right, not Stewart. Please. Okay, that's right. It was a rough night last night. The survivors at the end of this table. Yes, go on.
when we have representation in the head of something, we channel like it was said, we channel something particular into the word. So when the intuition, like feeling of this, doesn't have this channel,
Then what happens?
blank
Blank.
concept.
You gonna say something there? No, maybe it was Andre. Were you gonna say something?
I wasn't, but I can say something.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. We will all help Stuart here. We'll all be
Well,
Stuart.
not students.
Okay.
Is it because language precedes us? I don't know, I can't remember where I got that from, but somewhere I got that language precedes us. So, if it already exists.
So we just were walking along and suddenly lifted a rock and found English. Or found communication.
Well, it's older than me. So.
No, I'm playing with you.
Yeah.
Hopefully not in a nasty way. Yeah, Dane?
No, it's
No.
just, it's very
Okay.
original.
Yeah. it's
Something he would say.
that's cruel
A
and
language
harsh.
is not my own. I use a language that's not my own.
Okay. That's true. Go on.
So if the intuition has nothing to show, so it's a blank concept, then
Yes.
we can't represent that concept.
Right.
It can be just the concept itself. It can be just as blank. It cannot be represented by anything. We cannot
Right.
name it. We cannot give it a name. So because it's intuition, so it's the first contact with the thing.
Yeah.
So what we try to do, we try to name it or
Right.
come as close we can by what the pictures we have in our head tell us it is, but we never actually can grasp the thing. We cannot name the thing,
Right.
except calling it the thing, because that's the only way we can understand it, by not understanding it.
We're calling it God, for
Calling it-
example.
Yeah, but we're trying to name it, but it actually cannot be named, because it's blank. It's just the concept, that's it.
We're getting there. Getting there. Okay, Lauren, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's
Well, that's good, Lauren. Okay.
Well, I like the way he gets to sort of that last bit. Demand is.
So finish the blank bit.
Oh. Well, I mean, this seems to be like well, this distinction between the transcendental and transcendent. Well, yeah, that's
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh, second question then.
Is it a maternal phallus we're talking about?
Well, of all the questions I've ever had, I have to say, that wasn't one of them. That's fantastic. Okay, what do you mean by...
The maternal phallus, Freud's little boy, i.e. him, Freud, expects his mother to have a penis, is sure she's got one, and one day he notices she hasn't.
I always liked that part. When did he notice?
One day he saw that it wasn't there, and it was the concept of castration. So having an idea in your head that has no basis in materiality, it's a sort of ideology that you are kind of confounded when you realise that it's wrong. And that's the concept of castration as I understand it. Anything you expect.
Yes, I would like to say that is the concept of castration, which is why we're not doing that concept here. No, you're right. That is the concept of castration, which is that there is a kind of an incorrect ideology. You can have a false consciousness.
Yeah.
These guys are not talking about false consciousness. They're not even talking about true consciousness. They're not talking about, well, they are talking about consciousness, but it's a very different form of consciousness. So it's very important that you raise that question, but that it's a question that this platform wouldn't come into the platform. And the reason it wouldn't come into the platform is because we're almost there, we're not quite there, so I almost don't want to go with a punchline, but I just say that it's kind of what Jakob was saying just a second ago, which had to do with the way in which something can't be named, and so we call it the thing. Your implication was that there are things that could be named, But where they're gonna go with this is that basically nothing can be named in the way that the castration scenario would name. Because to do that would be precisely to set up this false ideology question. And they're arguing that there is no such thing as false ideology. There's only materiality. So there's no false version of materiality. I mean, there might be a black hole, but it's not false.
But you mentioned God
Yes, but
as an material.
probably should never have done that. Okay, again, I'm turning into last night. Okay, things are going well, so let's sabotage it. Okay, let's drop the God thing for the time being. Just forget I mentioned God. Lauren, go back to what you were saying with the transcendent and the transcendental.
Well, I think that seems to be the key. Somehow, I guess, well, neither of the terms seem to quite work, but it seems like perhaps one of them is more of a closure than the other. Well, okay.
It's much more than one is the other. I mean,
When is the closure?
one is the closure, the transcendent is the closure.
Yeah, that's what
And the transcendental is this incredible change that Kant brings in, saying that, going back to the example of language that they made, you don't own language, but nobody owns language, and language doesn't own itself. And yet, we use it.
Okay, we're getting there.
So this sort of this truncated cone that doesn't have the vertex or the origin, or the ground on which it hinges. And because it's not outside, the transcendent is outside this environment, as I understand it.
Where is this outside?
It's cut out. It's on the other side of the line. It would be the thing that exists in another environment, and then in the heavens in some models, and above the heavens for Plato, deep inside things for some kind of science. But the essence which exists is substance, is self-sustained and self-justified, cause of itself, origin and end of itself. And we are a representation of that model.
You say that mother.
Model.
Oh, model. This is the mother crowd, right? The mothership over here.
Mothers into it.
Yeah, have a go, because you're good at that.
Transcendent is transcendent is things that are not met with an experience, which he calls things like God.
Don't go fast. Go fast. Go slow.
Let's say being, let's say God, let's say the word, let's say freedom. All these things are met with an experience.
Okay, did you get that? So transcendent is not experience.
So let's stick being God or something like that. So these things we say, but then there's grey areas. You might think of things like society, like where can you have to point to society. So there's grey areas. These things not met with an experience. Transcendental things where he says things like all objects have a cause or things like that. But then there's an empirical side of that where you actually have to find the cause empirically. So transcendental are kind of ruled, pure, cause, things have quantities, qualities, relation, whether they're possible, all these things, whether something has possibility or necessity, contingent, he says these are pure transcendental ideas, which you then have to find with experience to make the law join up. So if the sun heats the rock, you have to find the cause for the sun and the rock causing up to be together. So transcendental ideas are based in experience. Transcendence are then these things not based in experience. The digger Hegel is in the fact that when he Kant and this idea of using representation, exactly how we hear himself in German Vorstellung representation, and Kant uses it, he goes like intuition, understanding, and then these transcendent ideas. So that's like the world's going to this world of ideas, the empirical world of ideas. The Vorstellung for him takes in all of that. He doesn't need a separate word. Takes in all of that. So when Hegel comes along, and his idea of intuition is slightly different, it's just tension drawn. You have the same kind of movement from, say, intuition to idea. He has a pictorial element in there. There's definitely a pictorial which he's digging out, as I'm saying there. So the idea, what you're saying about the idea of God, and then you have this like picture that's all in Hegel, and he wants to keep that because when you say something like in the Hegelian understanding of Vorstellung, you say it's my understanding of art. That's what Vorstellung means, not the understanding of art or the understanding of religion. So when you take out, what happens though is that the pictures that you develop become like a normality. You rememorialize and add to them. They become a norm, and that's the thing that they're trying to break with, the normality of the pictures, as it were. But there's nothing actually in the original classical canon that says you have to stick the things together in the way that you can systemize them in a different way. But this is not the way that happens. The way that the philosophy goes is that they get it gets fixed by Hegel in a certain way and normalized, universalized. So the language that develops out of the representation and then goes on into objectivity becomes normalized, and it's that really what's breaking. I think I want the Wittgenstein and the Heidegger want to break with the picture, with the image, the literal image. But then Leotard in the book from last year, which name escapes me.
Discourse figure.
Yeah. He's all into looking into the figurative part of that's left in the Vorstellung.
Yes, and that I think is I think that's because it's not just that they're trying to break the status quo, although that's part of it. I mean, that's a big part of it. Is that the argument goes further, saying that the reason a status quo gets established as such, forget about politically and people actually, some sort of, psychological thing, but is because the way in which one is understanding the analytic itself is predisposed to creating a status, to creating a unity that will always create a status quo, normality. So the question is, can you have meaning without having this normality? And how can you communicate if there's not some sort of way of having an exchange of communication? So Lauren, sorry, can you read after the little blank part?
I just started with that.
Yeah, start with blank.
It is the blank concept for an object for which intuition has nothing to show, but in itself, or as an object of thought, this empty concept is no less certain. Its transcendence is certain.
So it's not certain, or to put it slightly differently, the laws of certainty don't apply, but the fact that it is transcendent and will always be in this move of transcendence, that's what's certain. Question mark, nod, or go like this.
Yeah, I suppose.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Even that,
I don't know, I agree with that.
No, exactly.
that calls indeed for what was the ontological proof in tradition. Philosophers in the past always tried to prove the existence of God. That was the first task they tried, and the one that seemed always working was the ontological proof. That was completely plain inside thought.
And what is that?
Well, I remember one only, which is of Anselmo of Aosta, who said that I think
It was a what?
Anselmo of Aosta in the 12th century. He said it was.
I think it's a little how people remember things. So you remember something that someone said in the 12th century, and can you spell that name?
Anselmo, actually I can't really picture the names today. Anselmo of Aosta. Aosta.
What is it?
Anselmo.
Okay, the two of them know, but that's good.
Well, it was positing, it's a completely circular argument. This is why the certainty that Lauren just mentioned, brought it up. But it says that we think of God as the greatest possible entity. And the greatest possible entity in my thought must also be the greatest possible entity outside my thought, because otherwise it isn't the greatest possible entity. Therefore, God is the greatest possible entity, and therefore it's God.
This is also Bertrand Russell.
But yeah,
The set includes all sets.
It's a continuous game that Bertrand Russell, I've never put it properly, but I understand as a problem with that.
Yeah, the principle.
It becomes a paradox.
Yeah, the principle.
While this was taken as a proof.
Yeah.
This circular argument. So the transcendent, the paradox of that, is playing along this line of being self-justified.
Okay, so this still has yet to answer Stuart's question, which is, is there something before the the game of musical chairs, something like that, right? That, you know, is there something, if intuition doesn't make something have meaning, how does that happen? Like, if you don't have a picture, what happens?
There's an anticipation of stuff,
Okay.
which is prior to any judgment.
That's not what Wittgenstein is going to be saying, and it's not what Heidegger is going to say. So we got to be careful there. What's that? No.
It could be the infinite an example of that, because we need to think and to believe in the infinite to understand other things, but we cannot picture it.
Okay, but sadly, Heidegger and Wittgenstein could care less about the infinite. They only go back to the infinite because they can't prove the case, but they're trying to get away from that.
I am thinking of another movie since the visual. The beginning of Odyssey in Space of Kubrick. You remember there are monkeys and there is a dawn, and at a certain point, the monkey finds a bone and is playing around with the bone. And by playing around, it holds it and it becomes a tool, and it just hits everything and breaks all the other bones.
This is, what is this, Alien?
2001.
2001, Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey. And but it was not a tool before, and the monkey did not have a concept of tool before. And in that passage, the notion of tool and the object becoming a potential tool arises.
So it's in its use. So in its use, something takes on meaning. In its use.
In its
the
use.
way in which something
No,
is
I'm not
used.
saying it is the use of it. It's not a combination of pre-existing things. There is no a priori. There is no object waiting to be recognized as a tool. There is no idea of the tool looking for its object. At a certain point, rather than coming together, it expands from the center out.
Okay. I'm going to pause right now because I just want us to get to this page. Why don't you just finish? Okay, I can see what you're saying there. I don't mean I can see, but I just want to park it for just a second. Finish your paragraph again, and then I want to get to page 46.
Okay. The concept of the supersensible is transcendent.
And what is a supersensible? What's a sensible?
I just get in total confusion with this.
Okay.
Next to idea. It's the idea of freedom.
Okay, how about if we just park that for just a moment while we then just add in another ingredient just to annoy yourselves? Okay, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let us turn to page 46, the very bottom of the page. He talks about, hopefully we'll get to chapter 2, which is what we're going to do today, but anyway, which is about the question of wonder. And he makes the argument that in order to get the game going, you gotta start somewhere. And he makes the claim that what both Wittgenstein and Heidegger are going to do are going to bring in kind of what Mark was talking about, not so much anticipation, but this thing called wonder or curiosity. Although wonder is slightly different than curiosity, but it's, for the purposes of this argument he's putting forward, it's the same. So it says here that that wonder, it has been a starting point since Plato and Aristotle. And he develops this position by saying that it's very important that this thing called wonder takes you out of your preconceptions. Now this position is the basis of the Enlightenment. This is the basis of the Kantian move that Kant articulates, which is the supposing it could be otherwise. You know, what would it look like? I wonder what it would look like. Supposing, here you got this is, supposing it wasn't like that, supposing it was something else, or supposing the reason it works this way is because X, Y, and Z. You have no idea if that's true or not. So they both get into this question of how, well, he puts it as absent-minded preoccupations, and what Derrida then, he develops it along the Derridian move of the pharmakon, supposing it could have these two different ways minimally, both poison and remedy. And so it gets into this question of what does it mean to entertain this question of the wonder or the curiosity. And in both cases, they turn away from this. It's not so much that they turn away from, you know, the thing that gets you going, suppose it could be otherwise than not, because they're not anti-enlightenment. But there's something else that they bring in that starts to develop what it is that makes something individual, whether it's a human, a dog, a chair, or in any case, a thing. And that's what I'm trying to get you to get to. Can you think of what that is? Yeah. Does anybody have a... I'll just tell you.
It's not pleasure or pride.
No. What would Kierkegaard say it is? It's in the title of the thing we've been looking at for those of you that were there last night. Trembling. And what else? Fear. Excellent. Okay. Fear and trembling. But not the fear and trembling of being afraid so that it stops you. Or be afraid so you run with your head down and don't know what to do. It's the fear that makes you do something. So, when I was in my really seriously angry phase, which I probably will always be in, but anyway, when I was in my predominantly angry phase, and people would say, you know, I'd be too afraid to do this and that, and I would always turn around and go, well, you're just not afraid enough. Because if you're not going to leave your horrible life, you're not going to fight for the revolution or whatever it is, then you're not afraid enough. You don't realize just how afraid you should be. And it's that form of fear. Not because I said it, but you know what I mean? It's this form of fear that makes you go forward, or makes you go focused. Maybe forward is the wrong word. Makes you focus. Be afraid, be very afraid. Not in order for you to become a wreck or to run, but because you need to get focused. That type of fear. That's what they're going to start drawing on. And it's not a drive, and it's not meant to be psychological. So the question is, we're going to get to how it gets to be what it is supposed to be. Yeah. Dana, question? Anybody question?
Well, just about fear. Fear. You would say fear of what? Fear. It's each situation is kind of a singular identification of fear.
What is it that connects this question of fear that I'm talking about in this way, like you're not afraid enough kind of remark? What is it that makes that fear different than the one that makes you stay still or makes you freeze? That form of fear.
Motivation.
No.
No.
Not necessarily want. This is both motivation.
And move away from something.
Yeah.
Transformation.
But what is it that gives you that strength or whatever? We can't talk about will, but I'm not going to go there. What is it? Yes?
Death?
Death. Motivating factor. Yes. Arrows. Death and pleasure being the same thing in that sense, in the sense that there's no beyond it. So, in fact, what it is realizing there's no beyond. So, that there's no going back. There's only the singularity. I just had to throw that word in. It's too complicated at the moment to develop on page 52. We'll get further in the book and you'll get to where singularity comes. Or we could try like last night. I'll just throw it into the unsuspecting crowd of MA students. Anyway, so it's this kind of fear that is being raised here, or the fear that's being raised here, the trembling that's being raised here, is the form of a singularity. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background before we get to chapter 2, which is where we're really heading today, which is that this notion of singularity is enabled, or called a singularity, because it exists in a way that is, from the Kierkegaardian position, it exists as suspended from, it exists because it's able to suspend ethics, and it's able to suspend morals, and it's able to suspend intuition. It's in usual ways of thinking. What we were doing last night, we would say, like, you know, if I say yes, what's the opposite of yes? We know it's not yes. I get really sophisticated, no. Anyway, that's not quite right. But anyway, so it's yes, not yes. And we know that in some usual ways of arguing that these guys are breaking with, that everything has its not side. So there's a side and then there's a not side. But what if there's only the one side? You can only have a Mobius moment, a Mobius strip moment, when, as Kierkegaard develops, there's the secret, there's the hidden, there's the this moment where there's the suspension of ethics. And what they're getting at here is that this thing called the thing is this singularity. That tells you the answer to the question. Now we have to figure out what that answer really said, okay? Because it probably didn't make any sense in the moment. And there's about half of this group is thinking about the unseen, or somehow something's hidden. You can't think that there's an entity that's hiding under the table, or that's able to be, kind of revealed once you open, once you discover it. You just pull back the thing, and go, oh, I see you. Because if you pull something back, you're not going to see anything. There's no representation. That no representation is the thing. It's a singularity.
I'm just thinking in my head. I'm just thinking that
Which is better than thinking in your foot.
The unseeable, the unseeable rather than the unseen.
The unseeable.
That,
Yeah.
I suppose.
And the but
I
it's
said
called,
it to myself out loud.
but it's called the unseen because the unseeable, because of the word the. Because something that's unseeable is an adjective, right? It describes what can or cannot be seen. Or it's an adjective, yeah. Did I say adjective? Yeah, an adjective. So it describes a noun, that's an adjective. Whereas the unseeable, the way you're talking about it, is actually a noun. It's not describing a noun, it is the noun. Because that's the great thing about philosophers, they put the in front of everything, right? The. So the, or the unseeable becomes unseen. But unseen, in this example, becomes the verb, becomes the vehicle around which this unseeable thing happens. Well, that vehicle is the thing. And I just feel like, ta-da, and everybody's like, nope, nope.
So the problem is the tension between an image of thinking and thinking.
And can you think without an image of thinking? From either Heidegger or Wittgenstein's argument.
No, but that's precisely what all the beauty is.
Okay, so let's just stop there. So the answer to the question is no. You cannot think without making a picture.
Yeah,
That's Heidegger's position, and that's Wittgenstein's position in the later versions. In the early versions, they say the same thing, except their picture is a different picture. The picture in the early Wittgenstein and early Heidegger is a picture that has representational qualities, and therefore would be this phallic mother, or it could be a castration of the lack, the Lacanian mood. This is all part of that critique that they're making. Whereas what they're saying here is that you can think that thinking requires an image. It's just not a representational image. It's a singular, yeah.
Something that can be articulated.
But it can be articulated, just not articulated using the logic of, let's say, arithmetic.
But since we were speaking about fear, or we started with fear, there is a difference between being afraid of a huge rabid dog that you're running after, and being afraid simply because I cannot tell what's behind the corner or what's behind the door.
Mhm.
I didn't watch the movie because I know that it scared me, but the comics of Calvin and Hobbes, something is drooling under the bed. There's the old book titled that.
Oh, right.
And there's kid and his puppet and stuff.
You need to know the real readings that everybody does in the world.
And that's precisely the thing. You don't know what's under there, but that's what's unsettling.
So
Not
the
because you
fear,
spell
yeah.
something, but
Yeah.
because it's the no knowing is unsettling.
Right. So, for example, in the work you're doing, the picturesque, the Turner version of the picturesque is not actually a picture. It's
Certainly-
something that creates beauty.
It was at the beginning though with him, I think.
It was at the beginning.
Certainly later, the 30 years in between when he started doing picturesque and then later, no, it was
But the,
not recognised.
I would throw down the gauntlet and say that the picturesque that Turner is banging on about all the time isn't actually a picture. That it shows itself as a landscape is not because it's a picture of a landscape. It's because he taught people how to look at a landscape and therefore picture it. So it becomes he's one of the first thing people, as being discussed here.
Right, there's an example here, visual example of what you probably said. That's the first time visited there in 1794.
What is that called?
Sorry, that's Tinton Abbey in the Wye Valley. Okay, this
Okay,
is
show it to
Tinton
everybody.
Abbey, which was used by all Lawrence. Sorry. There it is. Okay.
Okay.
That was his
Do you want to
first.
show it to the
One of his
the
first
world?
visits was to Tinton Abbey, and that's what he came out with. Very, very sort of detailed painting. Now, then he went there in 1828,
Yeah, that's right.
and he came up with that,
Right.
which I've heard referred to as him painting coloured gases,
Uh-huh.
which is quite different. Is that what you're talking about? A different way of representation
No,
in this particular sense? No.
they're both what I'm talking
That's
about.
Turner, anyway.
They're both what I'm talking about. You can have a picture that looks just like a picture, like, you know, like, for example, that's, let's say, a realist picture.
I mean, it's the
first
same
one.
place, but
Yeah.
actually Tinton Abbey's not there. You can't actually see it.
Right, but in both cases, it's giving you a way to bring the senses into front and center,
Yeah.
focus, and that makes it picturesque. That makes it create the picture. So it's not that you have a picture that you're putting into your head, and then mimicking that picture. Like, it used to be an artist would be considered somebody who could really draw well a picture of what some, you know, of Christ or whomever it happens to be laying around, you know. So it was like somebody, that's what made one a good artist. If you could see that what you drew looked like the world, and if a bird could run and, you know, fling itself into your canvas because it thought it actually was a grape that was going at. There's a whole bunch of discussions about this, you know, how well did you paint that grape? And how well you painted it was part of this whole question of that form of picture. Whereas people like Rembrandt, all the people who are dealing with light, Goya, these are coming up with different types of pictures. They still look like pictures. I mean, you can still see a human form, for example, or in some of them you don't see a human form, like in this one, what happened to the Wye Valley there. It does look like a bunch of gases, and, you know, it's mainly orange and pink or something like that, it's salmon colored. But in fact, it's giving one a frame of how to look at something.
But is it, to me, there is just one step further. That picture that looks like real so much that the bird flies into it, or that the master tries to brush the fly off.
Yeah, right.
These kind of anecdotes. Have posed or imposed themselves as the correct way of picturing reality.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And this is what chapter 2 develops here, is that there is one way of doing things which has been erected as their way of doing things.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So the classic Renaissance painting has been then proposed or sold or imposed as the naturalistic way of representing.
Or naturalistic is the way of representing, yeah.
Both things, because then if one thinks of late 19th century French naturalist painting, Corot, that kind of form, is looking equally real, but in a completely different way. And
Yep.
then so much that, but there are also issues where the drawing is considered more real than working only with colors. And the old play of Cézanne paintings is
Mhm.
around that.
And of course, also the play between oil and watercolor, and all these issues that people have.
So then once something, not once, because it's not necessarily happening to every instance, but there is a movement of institutionalizing something as it to become the image of the world.
Okay, now here's the next question. And then we really will get to what is the thing. Wittgenstein says very famously, he's in, I think it's in, that little thin book, Uncertainty. I think it's in Uncertainty, but it might actually be in Remarks on Mathematics, I just can't remember. Anyway, he says there's a problem with this thing called the excluded middle. The excluded middle, which is literally the excluded middle, basically is based on the argument that on this side is the one side A, and on this side is the not A, and this thing in the middle is the excluded middle. And it's often where people say, well, I am in between if I'm transgendered, or I am boyish or girlish or something, I'm in between.
Liminality.
This liminality, and he's not talking about this. He says that that's a bad way of posing that. This is something wrong with the picture. When you look at, so he basically says, given that, his positioning is against this division between all that there is and all that is not taken together makes a little picture. This kind of way of saying. He says, if I do this, there we go, and I say, does this thing fit into this picture? Like, if I cut this out, is the way to conceptualize this that it fits into the picture or not? It's the way in which one tries to understand how you make sense of the picture. Like, to make sense of this picture, do I say, well, it's all that this bit is minus that, or it's all this minus the outside rim? He says, well, if you look at it that way, that's one way of understanding a picture. But for Wittgenstein, not only is it not the only way, it's a terrible way for understanding the picture. And the way that one has to picture a picture isn't to say there's no such thing as a picture, it's to understand what a thing is. And the thing's the thing. The thing is it's calling on a different form of articulation which brings in this question of singularity. Like mantra. Maybe this was not a good example.
It was a good example.
It was a good
That
example.
helped me personally.
Oh, good. Okay, let's go to page 53.
Okay.
Yes, right, sit at the table.
Okay.
Have dinner.
Forge.
That's right. That's hilarious.
No hands.
Now, Andre, don't forget about this. Okay, now it says here in Zettel. Now you know about Wittgenstein's work that the only book he actually wrote was the one he hated, which, you know, God love all of us. You know, when you finish your thesis, well, there are some people who do love their thesis, but there's not a whole lot of them because normally the thesis is written in such a painful, laborious way that by the time you finish, you're ready to like throw yourself off a cliff with the thesis. Okay, so not that you were trying to do this.
No, you go down pretty quick.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. So I say, don't throw yourself off a cliff. If you're really upset, throw yourself off a curb. Okay, you can have a symbolic act. You know, it doesn't have to be. Anyway, the point is that everything you see here, it's his students have written down. So Zettel, the blue and brown books, remarks on mathematics, uncertainty, anything. He wrote one book. It was a Tractatus. He almost pretty much wrote the philosophic investigations. I think he actually reviewed that, so he actually corrected it. But all the other ones he didn't. His family did, his friends did. So that's kind of interesting. I love that. I love that kind of collective authorship of Wittgenstein. You know, Wittgenstein is the thing. It's like, anyway, it's just an aside. Okay, he says here, one says, oh, actually, Mattia, why don't you read this? I don't.
One says, how can these gestures, this way of holding the hand, this picture, be the wish that such and such were the case. It is nothing more than a hand over the table, and there it is, alone and without sense. Like a single bit of scenery from the production of a play, which has been left by itself in a room. It had life only in the play.
What does that mean?
Well, is that abstracting or expecting to find entities that exist per se make no sense, because they have life only in the play, in playing with other things, in the commerce, with everything else, in the exchange, in the use.
In the use.
So there is another that it becomes obvious later on that their meaning, their invisible bodies, is not somewhere else. It is their circulation. So the meaning of language is the properties of grammar in this case.
Okay. Questions?
So it's a bit of a context.
So it's a context.
Something exists in a
Yeah,
context.
but the context isn't just this sort of flat thing. The context is, let's say, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Or it's either multidimensional or singularly dimensional. It's just not
One
a
thing.
fixed dimension. And then, anybody Dan, you want to read the Heidegger quote?
For every experience that I want to consider, I must isolate and lift out, break up and destroy the contexture of the experience, so that in the end, and despite all efforts to the contrary, I have only a heap of things.
And what does that mean?
It means if you take things out of context, out of its relations in order to understand it, it's just a dead thing. It's a husk of what it is, how it works, and how it's what its use is. None
good.
of that. It's just.
And doesn't that seem like a different thing than the thing we've just been talking about the last 2.5 hours? Because that's a dead thing, that you're saying, like a husk. But the blank that Lauren was talking about seemed more alive in a certain sense, had some sort of quickening aspects to it.
Yeah, so that's like that's like the thought without image.
That's thought without an image.
Yeah, so it's like
Right, excuse me. Hello? Wait, James, I'm in the middle of a class right now. Can you call back in 1 hour? Can you call back at 4? Yeah, okay, thanks, bye.
Because you know the 1950s were. Yeah.
Sorry, Lauren, go on.
well, I suppose
Yeah.
I was just like I always remember Deleuze sort of saying about the thought without image. So it's like, and which I was sort of like conscious of like the way Leotard works with figure, discourse, figure, but then. But so here it's like, yeah, they're getting out a picture in and using the image, but they're still sort of somewhat stuck in the solution of the thing as image. Doesn't quite, it's still sort of trapped, there's still a border there.
There's still a border there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still not quite out of that. So let's go into this. That's a good point. Did it?
Can I just say,
Yeah.
remember last week I talked about, and Oscar might disagree with this, that when Heidegger was looking at the Greek system, you know, the roots of the word system, whatever the Greek is, system, or whatever it is, he said, you know, that in his book on Schelling, was saying that, you know, system has this idea of bringing things together. So the heap is one end of the system, and the mathematical is the other end of the system. So the heap here is not
Not a
taken,
husk.
it's not outside, no, it's not a dead thing, it is something which you can apply this system to, as in just bringing things together, assemblies or something like that.
But also, these two quotes seem to be in contrast.
Right.
Because in one, we have things that are alive only when they are playing with the rest of the environment, the rest of the system. And in the Heidegger instance instead, it seems to, in these 3 lines, to break the play of the system down, so all the elements are
disparate.
Are disparate.
Yeah, and the key here is the word only. I have only a heap of things, I think.
But they go.
But then when you read it,
Yeah,
what happens?
they go on and criticizing this description that the image that comes out of this quote from Heidegger, as in that they criticize the idea that to understand something one has to clear the way and the field from everything that belongs to daily life, from intuition, all the supposed noise and dirt, so that one can get to a pure thing in itself. And they are rejecting the idea that the pure thing in itself makes any sense.
Right, there is no pure thing in itself. So if you talk about a thing, and you talk about an absent thing, which makes one think that it's pure, in fact, it's not pure. So it's a singularity, which is to say that it's not an empty pure. It's like a black hole pure. That's easier now these days, because we can think of it, yeah.
Well, they often, sorry to bring science fiction into again, but in Star Trek, Dave, hear me out. They often refer to things as singularities.
Yes.
They refer to a black hole as a singularity.
Yes, they didn't quite. I'm sorry about this, but Star Trek, as fabulous as it is.
But it just helps my understanding of what
No, it's true.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's true. But not everything that, I mean, it's great that they use these kind of words because they put it in the language, which is fantastic. Visualize it. But if you could possibly visualize that space is not empty, that doesn't mean that, I'll put this, that doesn't mean it's a gelatin or something that one's in. That doesn't mean this, you know, a black hole is not without something. It's just the something that it has is an antimatter as opposed to a matter.
Yeah.
But the antimatter isn't against matter. It's a differently constructed.
But sort of, isn't it really a way of labelling the not understandable in that
It might be.
sense?
It might be.
Yeah.
No, it's actually no answer. But anyway, yeah. Yeah.
Even following the metaphor of the black hole is such dense matter that gravity pulls everything back toward it.
Right.
So no
So it's not
information,
an
no light
empty.
can come out of it. It's not empty at all, actually, it's the opposite of empty.
Right.
But it is so dense that the gravity is so strong that even if you would try to get out of it, even if you would send information out of it, it would just bend and come back inside. And paradoxically, it's funny that the limit of the gravity pull or being able to escape is called an event horizon in physics. And outside of it, you can send information and see it back, although with some time delay on those problems. But past that event horizon, it seems that there is nothing, because actually nothing is reaching that point.
So it has to be something.
But we have,
So it has to be something.
but we have doubt about that.
I
don't
know
we?
it's upsetting.
Isn't this like
You can't check
Heidegger in the thing called,
Yeah.
talks about the whispering of the divine? In this case, it's the nuclear physics. You know, it's a kind of whisper that we don't really.
Yeah,
know.
we still
What's he talking about? You know, what's nuclear physics? If you know it, you don't know it, or something like that. You know, quantum physics. If you know it, you don't know it, kind of thing. It's just things that, you know, Higgs boson, there'll be a million other Higgs bosons in a million years, and another 10 million bits of pieces whispering from the gods, but never to get to the end of them, I don't know.
That's harsh. The reason I said it's harsh is because you think so.
What was harsh? Well, I said nuclear physics rather than quantum physics.
No.
So that's on my mind, these accidents within the nuclear.
Yeah, I can see that. No. But no, what I meant was that they're not as interchangeable as all that in the same way that transcendental and transcendent aren't really.
Yeah.
You know, they really, they're markers for, like quantum as a marker should bring to mind bundles of light. That's what quanta is talking. It's talking about bundles, how something gets together in this kind of formation. Whereas the second law of thermodynamics is going to be talking about kind of a fractal move, which is not a bundled environment. So you have a different. They call on different sort of tropes. This is not to make it more or less understandable, but it's just to say that I worry when we start bringing in whole other systems, because this is hard enough where we're trying to, get there. What were you going to say, Stuart? I want to bring in a whole other system.
I was just wondering whether in some ways the key word in both those is in.
What do you mean?
is that to do with the thing has to be in to be the thing. Is that too simple? Basically?
In what?
In the game.
Oh, in the game, yeah. Yeah.
Is that so?
That's not too simple.
No.
There's
Because
some
it's
parts.
not necessarily, the word's not in both, but it's implied. It's hiding is isolating.
And so what
it
is
out.
it in? What's the in that it's supposed to be in? Mattia called it a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mess we're in.
Impossible.
Not yet. Let's continue reading here. I'm going to skip the Tractata since you all seem to understand that one very well. Let's go to meaning bodies, page 59. Greg, you want to read the first paragraph under meaning bodies, which takes us to the over page. Okay? Can you do that?
So recall from chapter 1.
Yeah.
Recall from chapter 1 that Peach is a principal cause of philosophical confusion by leading us to think about one topic in terms borrowed from a very different subject. Wittgenstein came to see the dominant picture behind what are often called Platonic theories of meaning as the inclination to think of a meaning body. An inclination that leads us to move unwittingly from talking about meanings as they actually operate in our daily lives, talking about them like physical objects. One of the sources of this confusion in the Tractarian system lies in its demand that the set of combinations of a simple object or name can legitimately be absolutely determinate.
Okay, let's just stop right there. What does that sentence mean? What is this Tractarian logic he's talking about, Grace?
Well, he sets up the Tractarian idea that you can have an entire system that encompasses everything within language, so that there's nothing outside of it. It's just that's it.
Right. Good. Fantastic. Okay. Well done. Okay, so can you read that line again? One of the sources lines.
One of the sources of this confusion in the Tractarian system lies in its demand that the set of combinations that a simple object or name can legitimately enter be absolutely determinate.
Okay, keep going.
The set of state of affairs that actually hold is the real, but the set of all possible states constitutes the space within which the real occurs, the space of sense, reality's unaltered form.
Okay. Who wants to take a step? How come we want to translate that sentence? The set of states.
I see it as at the same time the. Trying. So.
Can you actually see on that phone?
Yeah. Yeah, I can. Wait,
Wow.
yeah, I'm surprised too. Sorry, I lost my iPad. I don't know where it is.
Here, read this sentence from here. I mean, as good as yours might be.
Yeah.
Can you read it out loud again?
The set of states of affairs that actually hold is the real, but the set of all possible states constitutes the space within which the real occurs, the space of sense, reality's unalterable form.
The reason I picked on you to say something is because your work seems to do this in great quantities. Can you do what's being asked of you?
I think whatever happens in a how to sorry, I have a problem. But whatever it's like I want to say it, but it's like it can't come out.
I understand.
Yeah.
Try it again.
Say let's say whatever's possible, the possibilities of happenings creates a space that makes those things happen.
But the thing that's happening is called what? It starts with an S, ends with an
Singularity. No.
Good. Yes, but wrong. Sense.
Sense. Yeah.
Can you explain this sentence?
It's the bringing in of experience, I think. So the real is what we experience in reality. So it's bringing in our own subjectivity.
Isn't that scary, Grace? It's like 2 for 2 now.
I really,
Well
I'm
done.
having a good day.
That's right. So, can you explain why is that called? Why is the sense considered the only thing that's able to have its certainty? Why is the sense? What is sense in this case?
But I see it as touch and
So that
actions.
literally
The senses.
tactility,
Yeah.
taste,
Yeah.
hearing,
Like mood, though, really.
mood, atmosphere. So, what isn't sense then? Let's try it that way.
Okay, so I mean.
Or
Well, as in logic.
logic. But as it turns out, the more we look at it, logic is also in sense. Yeah. So, Mattia?
Well, I have the impression that we are probably misunderstanding, or I misunderstood what Grace said. One of the two. Let's see.
Read the sentence out again.
The set of state of affairs that actually own is the real, but the set of all possible states constitutes the space between which the real occurs. The space of sense, reality's unalterable form. So the space of sense is not the first one, the state of affairs, but all the possible state of affairs together.
Okay, and then what
So
happens?
that's a pre-laid space on which the set of states of affairs that actually all takes place.
Can you perhaps speak about that in terms of if you were to take a photo or going to make a film? Can you translate that into?
Yes, I mean it would be, wanted to make a photograph, knowing that photographs are either portraits, landscapes, football matches, and weddings. Those are the possibilities. Holidays.
Wedding.
And therefore, one then, in which, in this set of possibilities, one has the set of states of affairs actually old is Grace's wedding last summer, and one took a photo.
I don't know if you knew that this happened. Grace wasn't present, but all right.
But one has a pre-laid set of options or dimensions, which are a picture of what photography is.
Okay, do you agree with that, Grace?
I
I
understand
don't know
that.
yet. I want to see where you're going with
That's
this.
right. And who did she marry? Was he any good?
Or, if you like, is thinking that ahead of us, although there is the screen of the present, the whole future is laid out in a line, and we will walk step by step on it. There is a notion of a code that will be able to represent any possible distance, because it is all explainable and contained in the code. So much as in the possible page, and the following page actually goes up like that, and brings up the ontology of the virtual.
If I think about pictures, I imagine the out of the frame. Something in reality is the frame, the picture. And because of the observation of the picture, you can see other things out of the frame, but they are not there. I mean, when in movies,
Okay,
the
yeah,
out of the
that's
frame in movies.
There's a third version now we got on the table. So the first version was Grace's version, which is basically saying that what is framed is experience, right, basically. Okay, and that experience is sensible in the sense that it's taste, touch, the senses. Then Mattia said no. In fact, what it is all possible scenarios. So it's not like you've drawn a thing around and framed this experience, but it's all experiences that could ever happen, and that all possibilities happen, and then what happens with that?
Well, then everything is pre-read somehow.
But isn't one of those possibilities nothing? One of the possibilities is...
I don't believe there is nothing in this set.
One of the
biggest
possibilities is, and moving it in a Heideggerian way, is obviously going to be the nothing. It's what is metaphysics, but what is metaphysics is about this about nothing where everything starts to recede. So you're stuck in this bedurance, this in between being and being, and so you're anxious. So it's this same with Grace that you said I'm anxious, but that anxious has manifested itself in a certain way. I mean, like
When you, because you're also married, and you didn't
Well,
know it.
because I'm in a limbo. I'm in a limbo state. My life is in limbo. I'm neither here, I'm not really here. I'm not a student. I'm not here. I'm not back where I come from. My life is kind of in limbo. Yeah. So there's a kind of anxiety, but this was manifest itself today in a particular. It's attached. It's becoming tangled in Heideggerian in, say, some specific fear, it's anxiety about the state of the world or whatever, but my actual anxiety, the state of being, your experience, my mood, has just kind of attached itself to that, as a possibility, because it's actually attached to, it's more actually concerned with the fact that the nothing, the lack of forethrow, the lack of what you said of possibilities, the possibilities that may
I believe it's all correct, but here is
But
describing.
you're all correct, but it's completely wrong.
Here is describing the previous moment, the Tractarian logic, the original logic of Wittgenstein, the beginning logic of Wittgenstein, where he is trying to explain everything from some basic points, some axioms, the atomic logic, and nothing doesn't enter into it because it's simply. He's only concerned with what is not nothing, what is. And now he wants to organize a perfect grid.
I think it's
But this is from the black.
No, this is the Tractarian. And then he goes on and criticizes this.
Well,
Yes, of course, but this is the description.
Actually hold is the real.
This is the description of the problem he's then trying to make.
Okay, hold on. Jakob, you can save yourself now. What were you going to say?
I will really try.
Okay.
I'm thinking to myself now, and that might not be good.
It's always good.
Yeah.
Sometimes marginally good, but anyway.
We talk about something being sensible, and that creates that's the frame of the experience. So the thing is not sensible, is it? It's not really sensible.
As in making sense, as in being clear.
Yeah, it's not, but it does enter the frame somehow.
Okay, so warm yet so not warm.
I'm also thinking like he doesn't say about nothing. I think he doesn't say about the thing, no thing.
He says no thing. Yes. Okay.
I think the thing is out of the frame, but displaying the frame.
Present.
The thing that are in the frame.
You're aware of it in the frame.
No.
They move.
That's right.
Sit on your hands.
When he's talking about the set of states of affairs that actually hold, he's talking about the Tractarian system of language, how if we can say something, we can say it clearly using this system which he has laid out for us. But that's not, that's not all that there is. He talks about das Mystische, the mystical. It's there, but we have to pass over it in silence. We just can't say anything about it. We have to leave it alone. Keep it separate from these things that actually hold.
So warm.
I'm just thinking there's a distinction between like closed set and no set. So
A closed set and what type of set?
no set.
Oh, no set.
So it's like the this.
It is Newtonian geometry. He's speaking about here.
So the
Step
space-
away from the Newtonian geometry. Okay, no.
But the closed set is still like this. What is this? Like instead of like so the bit that's being put forward, this treats possibility as in a sense actual. The space of the possible is already there with all possible possibilities. So those possible possibilities precisely mapped out. That's still to put forward a closed set. That's the problem of it. And
So
but I mean, I'm agreeing with you in that that's what he's sort of explaining. But on the other hand, where we want to get to is the no set, because the closed set that's just a false idea. The singularity
What
in
I'm
the
trying to get
closed
is
set.
something else. I was trying to describe what is being said in this sentence.
Yeah, but I think
Okay,
it
let's
is.
try it again. Let's try it again. One last kick of the can, because does anybody now know what is the sentence we're thinking about?
I'm lost now.
Okay,
I
that's
have to be
right.
honest, I have to be honest. It's dissolved it.
That was it. That was just the last straw, Like, okay, what is the sentence that we're now trying to find the answer to what we're...
Well, oh, sorry, Jim.
Well, maybe we can start from one sentence above. One of the sources of this confusion in the Tractarian system lies in its demand that the set of combinations that a simple object or name can legitimately enter be absolutely determinate. And the set of state of affairs.
Everyone's clear about that particular thing. And what does that mean?
So it won't be a singularity.
No, but what does it actually mean? Don't tell me what it won't mean, but what does it mean? What does it mean to be absolutely determinate here?
It means it is entirely predictable.
There's an identity that's
yes, between what we have now and everything that we can find in the future. It's determinism.
Okay.
That linear determinism.
So if I say I have a picture of female in my head, and if I'm saying that this is the Tractarian view, what would that imply about that?
That you will be able to recognize all females according to that picture, measuring them against the
Right,
picture.
okay, so there's a determinate picture. So if I have ectoplasm in my head, I can find it, right? So that's the Tractarian position. Now what's the next sentence? That's also the position around what, let's say, certain forms of photography does and certain forms of film. That it does something, it freezes time, it documents, that's what it's doing. Or that painting paints an image, paints something. So there's the determinate expressions. Go on.
So then it goes on, the set of state of affairs that actually holds is the real.
Okay, so the determinate state of affairs that actually hold is this thing called the real. And how easily understandable is this thing called the real?
But it's the senses, is the experience.
Right, so it's totally not understandable, right?
Yeah.
It's understandable, but it's not determinately understandable.
But
So that's the only thing that can actually hold everything is this thing called the real.
But the set of four possible states, so not only this one that is the one that actually holds, but all the possible states, those measurable against the image of female or whatever that we mentioned before, constitutes the space within which the real occurs. It's a stage, literally. The space of sense, reality's unalterable form. So it's a pure mathematical description of the universe, of sense, of feeling, of our lives. But one can calculate ahead of time, and vice versa, almost work back in time. It's a very mechanical.
And he's criticizing that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because what Jacqueline's thesis is about, for example, is presenting that position. Not the position that's being criticized, it's criticizing that position. Wouldn't you say? So this is exactly what the feminine écriture, can you say it? Écriture, okay, French.
I mean, then it goes on to say, these treat possibility in a sense as actual. The space of the possible is already there, with all possible possibilities precisely mapped out within it. What you call ontology of the virtual.
Okay, say that sentence one more time, because we got there.
This treats possibility as, in a sense, actual.
What treats possibility as actual?
Projecting the picture of what we have now as the parameter for all the possible instances of we will encounter later on.
Right.
Therefore, being able to calculate them. So that turns the possibility of encounters in the future into somehow predictable and pre-read, pre-interpreted, pre-described.
Which is precisely, it's a magic method.
No, axiomatic.
What?
Can you say?
Oh, axiomatic.
Axiomatic.
It's also actually a magic method, a supernatural method.
But also takes away every possible
But yes,
freedom.
it's axiomatic. Yes, go on.
Okay.
So what does it do? It
Takes away every possible freedom.
Yes, and why does it do that, including the determinate one? Why does it take it away?
But because it says that there is one code that is valid for organizing and explaining everything. So in a certain way, everything has already happened in this model.
No, you were good all the way up until that last bit, I think. If I've understood what you said, what I thought you said was that when you have this projection of everything, then when you have a situation where everything's determined,
Mhm.
and then you're reading that back in to become the code around
Mhm.
which the prediction can happen, it will always be a determinate prediction,
Yeah,
even if it's an infinitely determinate prediction, and therefore you don't have freedom
yeah.
in that. So that is not to say, though, that if that is not to say that you can't have a determinate picture.
No,
Because a determinate picture
every
can also.
picture is determined. Every picture is absolutely determined. It's determined according to this code.
No, no,
of this
no,
image.
no, no. What I'm saying, or what I think will be eventually something we get to in this book, is that to get an image doesn't necessarily require doing this move.
No.
Okay, right, okay. So you can have the move of, let's say, supernatural, whatever it happens to be, the identity of gay, the way in which one is trying to present something without having to codify the determinate scenario, which is basically Turner's position on the picturesque. He's saying there's this thing called the picturesque, which isn't going to look like a landscape. It's the landscape looks like how I pictured it. Just very different scenario. That's why I picked on you, because I think that's what your work was doing that won the prize last year. So
Still this,
That's
It's a dog
right.
way,
But I think I start to, starts to move in that.
So you're not doing the thing that's being criticized. What your piece did, which made it very alive, was that in its presentation, it was representing. It wasn't representing a determinate position. It was able to keep looping a presentation that created an infinite set of possibilities. But in so doing, wasn't creating the representation of it. It was creating a picture, an image. The image that's being now discussed by a thing and not by identity.
So it's spoke instead of.
So it's what?
So it, I call it, it spoke by itself.
Oh, it spoke, yeah.
It not being a language, basically.
Yeah.
It just spoke.
Yeah.
It's
It
itself.
speaks.
Yeah, it speaks. but
Speaks,
it's
it has a
not-
voice.
Yeah, it's not representative, it's not language.
Hence Kierkegaard and his obsession with attunement. Just let me throw that in. Just because I'm still thinking about Kierkegaard. Anyway, go on. So what is this virtual ontology thing?
Well, it is the not visual ontology, ontology of the virtual.
Okay,
So
sorry.
the
And why is that different? Why is virtual ontology not the same thing as ontology of the virtual?
because saying ontology of the virtual considers as existing also all the instances that are still only possible. They are not yet here. They are not yet happened in the past or happening. They might never realize, but they are calculatable, predictable, because ultimately the thing that we are looking for is a mathematical formula or a code that
Okay.
permits them all.
It's a what?
Permits them all.
Yes, okay, so to put it slightly different and to really throw the cat amongst the chickens? The pigeons. There's one bird. I don't know which one it was. It's very hard moving countries, you know. There's different expressions, you know, it's very different. Is to say, in Gödel, you know, he had this whole question about undecidability. And he makes the argument that in whole systems, in whole number systems, everything, including arithmetic, is undecidable, is indeterminate. And you can think to yourself, well, how can that be? You know, 1 plus 3 is 4. But if you're thinking about this thing, the virtual ontology and the ontology of virtual, if you said 1 plus 3 equals 3 plus 1, in a mathematical or arithmetic formulation, that would hold as equal positions. But in fact, if you look at it the way in which it's set, the way in a grammatical formulation, if you swap the words around, entirely different readings emerge, even if you're using the same words.
Yes.
So what that tells you, apart from the fact that it's kind of obvious, but what it tells you is that language, when it's not arithmetically established, although when you get into Gödel, even in arithmetic formulations, it always creates the platform of an undecidable terrain. Apart from Mattia, did anybody else hear what that was being said? Because this is the basis of how they're building this thing called the Groundless Ground, title of the book. So don't get upset if you didn't get it, because it's tough.
Well, it is, one can describe it as thinking that when language is not only understood as name-object, so it's a name-object system, when one starts thinking that there are verbs or things happen, and pointing as indicating the meaning of something. Like it says here that in German the root of meaning and pointing is the same. So Ostension is saying this is a pen. The meaning of the word pen is this object. It seems immediate. But when I start saying quickly or I critically moodily, then what do we point at?
Mm-hmm. Right. Did anybody hear on BBC that they said that elephants are the only animals that can point?
Well, they
Understand
understand
pointing,
pointing.
Understand pointing.
Well, sorry, but what about dogs that go hunting, that are called pointers, for example? Don't they understand pointing? I was so annoyed when I heard this.
They perform pointing.
What?
They perform pointing. The dogs perform pointing, where the elephant understood what the handler was doing by pointing to a certain bucket.
But if you've ever been to the circus, and this is in the days when health and safety was not reigning supreme. When I went to the circus when I was a child, I was taken at 4 years old to Barn Bailey, that's what it was, in Rockefeller Center in New York. I'll never forget it because I was 4 at the time. And they had lions and tigers and bears and that kind of thing. Anyway, they're running around in a ring, and they would point to the stools, and they knew to get on them.
That's conditioning there.
That's my question. See, so elephants and humans are the only ones that understand pointing. Is that the idea here?
An innate sense of no pointing.
Yeah.
Also, elephants understand. They've done this experiment where they put a plaster on an elephant's face and showed a mirror image of it, and it would kind of feel around its head because it understood.
And doesn't a monkey understand pointing?
Apparently not.
See, this one bothers me about this kind of thing.
Lacanian elephant.
A Lacanian elephant, exactly. Cool.